It's one win in our last 5 Premier League games now. Mikel picked the strongest 11 possible. We were beaten at home, and with Newcastle and Liverpool still to play, there's a genuine concern about finishing in the UEFA Champions League places. We're going to break down Arsenal 1, Bournemouth 2 on today's episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast. Let's get into it. Hey everybody, how's it going? Happy Sunday and welcome back to another live episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast with me, your host, Harry Symeou. How are we doing? Difficult one to take that yesterday, wasn't it? I'm kind of glad that I was busy last night because it meant that I was distracted, sort of finished up from the game and was in a bit of a rush afterwards. I had a school reunion, which was quite cool. Sort of rushed home, had a quick bite to eat, got ready, went. And for that reason, I probably didn't sit and mull over the game as much as everybody else, at least throughout the evening. But when I got home at about, 1 a.m., something like that, when I got into bed and I started scrolling through social media, which I probably shouldn't do just before wanting to go to sleep, I started to read certain things. I started to process what we'd witnessed a little bit more. And I actually ended up quite annoyed and quite frustrated. And actually, I came to the conclusion that what we watched yesterday, at least in that second half, was unacceptable in a lot of ways. And I know that the focus has been on the Champions League for a while. I know that no matter how hard you try to stay focused in the Premier League, there is something, even in the subconscious of our players, that says Champions League, Champions League, Champions League. That is where it's at. I understand that, and I completely get it. But as professionals, you should be able to go a fair way in dealing with that issue. Now, I'm not saying that you're ever going to be at 100% in the circumstances that we find ourselves in. It is Champions League, right? Over Premier League every single day of the week. If we finish third, fourth, or fifth, but we make it to the Champions League final, you'd take that, wouldn't you? You would swap those positions. You'd swap our second place where we are currently for a pass into the Champions League final, right? So it's a kind of trade-off that I think most people would be willing to make. But at the same time, there's got to be a level of professionalism. And if you're Mikel Arteta and you pick that really strong side that he did and you lose the game, you are going to have to be prepared for the criticism that is going to come your way. We knew that this would be a tricky game. Bournemouth looking to qualify for Europe for the first time in the club's history. Have they suffered a little bit of a dip in recent months under Andoni Iraola? For sure. But generally, they've been a really good team under him. They've come on leaps and bounds. They've progressed. They play a really interesting style of football. And they're a side that are very well drilled with some really talented players, right? So I get it. Yesterday was a tricky game, particularly given it was sandwiched in between the two PSG games. But I want to see more. And whether that's being more clinical, being more potent in the first half and putting the game into a state where you can then cruise for the remainder of it and just staying professional, or whether that's maintaining a good level of performance for the entire game, I don't really mind. I don't really care, but you've got to get the desired result when you pick a team like that. And not only that, when you get in front, you've got to see it out. Now, you can get pegged back with an equalizer and you can end up drawing a game. And as frustrating as it would have been our 14th draw of the season, right? It's nothing new. But to actually go on and lose it felt like a real punch in the gut. Draw, not good enough, really, but I can kind of live with that. To be beaten at home and for Bournemouth to do the double over us for the first time in their history, incredibly frustrating. And if we look at the Premier League table and the state of it right now, if I just bring it up on my screen, for those of you that are watching us live on YouTube right now, you will understand, I think, why I'm frustrated, why I'm concerned. Let me bring it up now. Hold on a second. Share screen. You know, we've gone from a position just a few weeks ago after we beat Chelsea where I thought, you know what, we've pretty much done enough now for second place. That was how I felt. But you look at it now and, you know, we're miles behind Liverpool. We're like, 15 points behind Liverpool. Manchester City are only 3 points behind us, and they've got much easier fixtures remaining than us. We have to play Newcastle, who want to consolidate a Champions League spot, and will have us in their sights because they're only 5 points behind us. And they've got a game in hand, by the way, because they're playing today. And, so if they win, let me just double check today's games and fixtures just to give you a bit of context around what the wider picture looks like. Because I'll be honest, I checked out after yesterday. I checked out. I had to. They take on Brighton away. It's not an easy game, obviously. But if they were to win that, then Newcastle United would move on to 65 points. They'd be 2 points behind us on the same games. They come to Emirates Stadium and we've got to go to Anfield. And no matter what you say about Liverpool, they've already won the league and all the rest of it, and it's all one big party on Merseyside. That's not a place you want to go to needing a result under any circumstances. So there's a good chance that we lose second spot. If Chelsea win their game today, let's say they beat Liverpool, they move on to 63 points, which could happen. We're talking about Liverpool maybe having their feet up. They move on to 63 points. They'll only be 4 points behind us. So all of a sudden, this Champions League qualification that we could have ultimately pretty much secured actually yesterday with a victory is now in jeopardy. Finishing in the top 5 is in jeopardy. Holding on to second place, which I've been saying for a long, long time is really important, is not looking great. It's not looking like it's going to be an easy task. Is it impossible? No. But we're not in a position that we want to be in right now. And this is not because we just lost to Bournemouth. We've been in a really, really bad run. 1 win in our last 5 Premier League games. And I know, again, people will talk about the distractions of the Champions League. It's a good distraction, but it's still a distraction. People will talk about the injuries, the players that we've been without, the inability to rotate, etc., all of those things. But top teams, they don't drop off in the way that we have. Whatever the circumstances, we've dropped off really, really badly in the Premier League. And I've kind of let it slide a little bit over the last few weeks because I've been caught up in the Champions League bubble, but also because until yesterday, I never really felt that our position as a Champions League club for next season was in jeopardy. So to go from a place where we were looking at second and going, it's pretty much ours, to now wondering if we're going to be able to hold on to a Champions League place, is pretty bad, isn't it? It's very, very alarming. And so, yeah, I can understand completely today why people are frustrated and why people are upset. In terms of the team that Mikel picked yesterday, let's have a look at the team that he selected yesterday, because there was a lot of chat about, do you rotate? Do you go weak? Do you go strong? I think we all predicted that he would go strong, but I don't think many people predicted that he'd make just 2 changes. One of them being enforced, by the way. One of them was Jurrien Timber being replaced by Ben White because Jurrien Timber had picked up some kind of issue in the PSG game. He had to come off, remember? And, he's a doubt, according to Mikel Arteta, for the game against PSG on Wednesday. So that's a big concern. But, other than that, and maybe Mikel Merino up front, which was the other change, Merino out, Partey in, that's as good an 11 as you could hope to field, really. I know that in an ideal world, you got Kai Havertz in there as well and, Big Gabby. So obviously it's not perfect. But it's as good an 11 pretty much as Mikel Arteta could have picked yesterday, barring 1 or 2 players. And so, yes, we've had injuries and yes, we've had issues, but the level shouldn't drop that much. And the fact that it does is becoming a concern for me. We talked a lot, didn't we, last summer about raising the floor of the squad. And some people will argue that we have done that because we are still in the Champions League. We're in the Champions League semi-finals, despite all the problems that we've got. But the way we've fallen off in the league, whatever way you want to dress it up, has not been good enough. And to lose games at home like that is simply not acceptable. So he could have rotated more. And if he had rotated more and we'd lost the game, I do think the reaction would be quite different. Yes, there would be frustration. Yes, there would be people questioning whether or not that was the right thing to do, given what it does to our sort of prospects of qualifying for the Champions League next season. By the way, for what it's worth, I still think we'll make that happen. I still think we'll do that. But do you get what I'm saying? If you make the changes and then it goes wrong, people go, okay, well, look, PSG's the priority. And they can accept it and they can move on from it pretty quickly. But when you pick a team that is pretty much the team you're going to field out in Paris on Wednesday night and they perform this badly, particularly in that second half, you can understand why people are feeling pretty damn pessimistic about Wednesday night. Now, I was chatting to a friend of mine yesterday. I won't go into it, who's a League Two manager. And we were talking about the game. He's an Arsenal supporter, but he's a League Two manager. And we were talking about the game. And he said to me, yeah, but you know what? Wednesday will be a different animal. Wednesday is a completely different ball game. And to a degree, I agree with that. And I get that. And I understand that. But this was far from the ideal preparation. And we'll get into the ins and outs of it as we work our way through the podcast. Just a quick hello to everybody joining us on the live feed right now, whether it's on YouTube or any other platform. Really, really appreciate you guys being here. Any likes on the video, very, very much appreciated. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And if you're listening to us on audio, please do leave us a review. That really, really does help. I do want to say a special good morning to Luke, who got in touch this morning to say, morning, Harry, hope you're well. Shame about the result yesterday. All eyes on Wednesday. If possible, can you give me a shout out on the next Chronicles podcast? It's my birthday today. Thanks, mate. Happy birthday to you, Luke. And I hope you have a great day with your friends and family. All the best, mate. And sorry that Arsenal couldn't do it for you in terms of the result and the performance in the end. So, okay, let's talk about the whole day, right? So the atmosphere was subdued. There were tickets available. There were lots and lots of empty seats. It's been the case for a few weeks now when it comes to the Premier League games, because the Champions League is dominating right now. You know, you wanted to go to PSG the other night. You couldn't find a ticket for love nor money. But the Premier League games in between, tickets have become really, really easy to come by. A lot of season ticket holders putting those on the ticket exchange, myself included in recent weeks. Obviously, I've got my season ticket, but I do work a lot of the games. And when I do work the games, normally one of my brothers takes it on. But it just kind of shows that the interest is dwindling a little bit when you're getting sort of messages in advance saying, look, I don't mind going, but, you know, if you want to sell it and make a bit of money back on your renewal, then go for it. You know, and I've been doing that. And I'll be honest, in previous instances where I've put the ticket on the exchange, it's been snapped up super quick. Like, I will literally list it, and within 15 minutes, I've got another email saying your ticket has been purchased and X amount has been credited to your account. That's not been happening recently. You know, sometimes it's taking days for the ticket to sell. And that just shows you, doesn't it, that yes, look, there is demand because it does sell eventually. And there are people that don't get to go to all the games they'd want to. And so as a result, when an opportunity comes along, they want to take it. But it's just sort of indicative, isn't it, of the mood around our Premier League campaign right now. And you know what? I might argue and I might make the case that our attitude towards it as supporters has contributed to this drop-off. And I know people are going to be annoyed about that, and not everybody's going to accept that. But I do think that if we turn up to games not really caring too much and not really showing that enthusiasm, it contributes to a really subdued atmosphere. If you're a player and you walk out into a, you know, only 2/3 full stadium, it's going to impact, I think, on you a little bit as well. The fact that people all disappear at halftime, 5-10 minutes before it, the fact that people are heading for the exits on 80 minutes, all of these things, I do think they contribute. I'm not blaming the supporters here because I can understand why they feel that way. We spend a lot of money to watch Arsenal Football Club. It's not easy for everybody to do that, etc., etc. But I do think the whole mood around our Premier League games, from us, from the players, maybe from some of the staff, from you know, the media, all of it, I think it all contributes to sort of devaluing these fixtures, and then it maybe makes it a little bit more difficult for us to get up for them. I don't know. I'm just sort of riffing here, thinking out loud. We did manage to score through Declan Rice on 34 minutes. And you know what? It was a really, really good Arsenal goal. Really good Arsenal goal. I really enjoyed it. Martin Ødegaard doing what Martin Ødegaard did previously, sort of picking up the ball in the dangerous area, playing a really clever sort of reversed pass, really good angle on it, really great weight. And that just allowed Declan Rice to make the kind of run that he was craving to make against PSG. He rounds the goalkeeper, whatever, and he finishes it really, really well. That was his 100th Arsenal appearance, Declan Rice. That has come around quite quick, hasn't it? And that was his 8th goal of the season. So he's gone one better than the tally that he managed last season. But I think the big takeaway from me for that goal was, look, Ødegaard can still do it. He's not been very good lately. He's not been very good. He has struggled. He has really looked off sorts. He's not been anywhere near the player that we know he's capable of. But that was kind of just a little sign that maybe, at least at that stage in the game, that Martin Ødegaard was sort of coming through the pain and starting to play, in the way that we know he can. Fantastic reverse ball. In goes Rice. Excellent finish. Confident finish. And at that point, I'm looking at it and I'm going, look, I don't expect us to go and put 3s and 4s and 5s past this lot. They're a very good side. But I expect us now to just manage the game and to be sort of maybe at 75% of the pace. Now, maybe that was me being arrogant, and maybe, that was never going to work against a Bournemouth side that do have something to play for, that are very much interested in qualifying for Europe. It would be a historic achievement for their club. And maybe that was naive of me to think that Arsenal at 75% could get through the remainder of the game. I don't know what happened at half time, though. Like, it just felt like in the second half, we were a completely different team. Did we start to think about PSG? Did players start to tire because they'd spent so much of the game the other night sort of chasing the ball and chasing shadows, which isn't something we're used to? Did it all start to catch up with us a little bit? And at that point, I started to question the decision to pick the team that he picked. Could he have not freshened it up a little bit from the beginning? Or is there an argument that had he done that, played some of those fringe players, we wouldn't be in the leading position that we were going into the break? You can argue it both ways, but the longer the game went on and the more tired and fatigued we look, the more I started to think that actually picking the 11 that we did, it probably wasn't the right idea. Now, I've got the benefit of judging that with hindsight, right? Mikel Arteta doesn't. But it was a question that was going around in my head as the game went on and on and on. But look, when the break came, I was satisfied. As I say, we were winning while showing some flashes of what we can do. I thought Martinelli was lively down the left, creating things, probably should have hit the target with an effort he had. We were in front without massively overexerting ourselves. So what on earth happened at the break? It was like somebody took the batteries out of the remote control. I don't know how else to describe it. We go out there, we're sloppy. The spaces between our lines are too big. Bournemouth were obviously trying to win the game and trying to, get themselves back on level terms at that stage, and were committing bodies forward. And that was leaving spaces for us to expose. But we were wasteful, man. We were wasteful. There was times at the start of that second half in particular where players would get on the ball in plenty of room. And I'm thinking, go on then, make something happen. It's not every week you get this kind of space. We're often moaning about the low block that we're up against, or the fact that a team have camped 10 players behind the ball and we can't find a way through. Well, that wasn't the case yesterday. When we found ourselves in those threatening positions, we didn't make enough of them. We just didn't make enough of them. The only real threat I can think of was when Miles Lewis-Skelly played a good pass through the lines into Saka, and he cut inside, having popped up on the left this time and got a shot off with his right foot, which he curled wide. But outside of that, for the spaces that were available, for the opportunities that we had on the transition, which isn't something you often say when we play at Emirates Stadium, we just didn't produce anywhere near enough. If we go on to defend the way we defended in what remained of the game in Paris, if we go on to defend that way, we're going to concede 5 and 6. And that's not even an exaggeration. We were all over the place for so many reasons, and for set pieces. And the thing is, we're a team that's notoriously been very, very good at set pieces. There is a set piece stat going around that sort of makes it look like we've been really poor defensively from them this season. But actually, so many of the ones that we've conceded have been in recent weeks. And so what that means is that figure is a little bit it's a little bit skewed in terms of like the suggestion that that's been a problem for us all season. It's not been. It's a problem now. We've been without Gabriel for a while. Kivior's had some great games. I don't think he had a great game yesterday. Lewis-Skelly has had some great games. I don't think defensively he had a great game yesterday. I thought Ben White yesterday was really, really off it. He looked so rusty. It was unbelievable. And again, it's understandable, but you can't afford, if you want to maintain the top level, to bring players in that are that far off of where they need to be. Now, in this case, we didn't have Jurrien Timber available, and so there wasn't really a decision to make. But, it shocked me, actually, how far off it Ben White looked. And, he's come back, and then he's had a few niggles and a few knocks and a few setbacks, and that is perfectly natural when you've been out for a long, long time. But knowing what we'd known about Ben White previously and how many games he'd come through, even at 60, 70% at times, and sort of the physical condition that he was in, I'm finding it really tough to watch him struggle physically in the way that he is at the moment. There was that moment in the second half. I know that he can do it to a lot of players, but where Ouattara just knocked the ball past him and just literally sprinted and left him sort of eating the dust in his trails. It was just so far from the Ben White that we've become accustomed to. It was very, very hard to watch. And I'm starting to worry now that Ben White is going to struggle to get himself back to what he was. And we've been lucky in one sense that Jurrien Timber has emerged as a really, really good right fullback. And, it feels like he's the number one right now. And I've seen nothing to suggest in recent weeks when he has played that Ben White is going to be able to take that position back off of him. But Ben White's another option for us. And that's all well and good. But if you don't have that option fit enough or at a level where they can help you, then how good an option are they? It's really tough at the minute. It's really, really tough to watch. So Bournemouth equalize on 67 minutes, right? Howson's header. And it was a long throw from Antoine Semenyo. Now, I've seen a lot of sort of criticism around the way we defended this, and I'm going to criticize our defending. Believe me, I'm going to get there. But I do think this was a lot more difficult to defend than people would like to admit, because the delivery from Semenyo is un-effing believable. Not only has it got the distance, not only is it traveling at a speed, which means that you can use the power on the ball to create some kind of sort of power on the header, but it's such a flat delivery. There's no loop in it. It makes it really tough as a centre-back to kind of jostle for position and to win your duel there, because when it's got a bit of a loop on it and the ball goes up into the air, that gives you time as a defender to adjust. That gives you time to read the flight of the ball, to get yourself in the right position, get on the right side of the defender. In this instance, we didn't have that. It was such a flat delivery from Semenyo. And Howson produces a brilliant header, because I said that there was enough on the ball to generate some sort of power, but it's not enough power to beat David Raya if the placement isn't perfect. And the placement there is bloody perfect. It really, really is. It's across the goal. It's just inside the post. Really, really difficult for David Raya to get to. And Bournemouth level up. And then at that point, I'm thinking, okay, what do we do here? Do we really try and turn it on now and go and win this game? Or do we say it's not been our day, take the point, and just make sure that we don't do anything silly? Again, that's the kind of conflict that I think that the Arsenal players would have been feeling at the time. Do we really push for this? We've got PSG to come on Wednesday. Or do we just kind of manage this out now and accept that we're not going to get all 3 points and that we're going to get 1 point and we move on? Who knows? Who knows what they were thinking at the time? But after that, we created nothing, which was really, really frustrating. Evanilson then scores on the 75th minute. And the reason I didn't lead with this is because I don't think we should go huge on this, because I think if you do go huge on this, you're almost excusing what was a really, really poor performance. And you're also excusing Arsenal for being on a really dreadful run as far as the Premier League's concerned. 1 win in 5 is nowhere near good enough. But you have to say, looking at those replays, that it looks like the ball comes off of Evanilson's elbow before it goes into the back of the net. And we've had our fair share of rotten decisions go against us this season. And because of that previous frustration, anything that goes against us in the future is going to feel a lot worse. But yesterday, rather than being sort of angry, because I was getting, as we went through that period in the season where we got all those rotten decisions given against us, for me, it was like anger, built to more anger, developed into further anger, moved on to greater anger, etc., etc. Right? It kept going on and building for me. And I was at a point where I was furious. Yesterday, no word of a lie, I was sitting there laughing. Because this is the standard of refereeing that we have right now. And then I hear all these pundits and stuff on TV afterwards say stupid things like, well, you know, I don't think it did hit his elbow, or maybe it did, but those pictures that we've got, they're inconclusive. Well, what the hell is the point in having VAR if the pictures are inconclusive? The direction of the ball, the way that the ball goes back down into the ground shows you that it comes off of his elbow. He's got a flat stomach. I'm pretty sure he ain't got a beer belly like me for it to divert in the way that it would have done. It definitely come off of his elbow. Now, if you want to make the case that Bournemouth perhaps should have had a penalty, if you feel like Martin Ødegaard might have fouled Evanilson, fair argument. I personally don't think there was enough there, but I can accept that as a debate and as an argument. I can't express enough how much I don't want this to overshadow what was a really shit second half performance. But I've got to say my bit on it. I have said my bit on it, and we'll move on from it now. But, it is another very, very questionable decision in a season that's been riddled with them. And, as a club that's been on the receiving end of most of the bad ones in this division this season, it's pretty hard to stomach. But look, again, it shouldn't cover over the fact and sort of paper over the cracks around our performance, because it was shit. It really, really was in so many ways. The other thing, though, about that whole set piece and the way the goal came about, why is Martin Ødegaard the guy at the far post dealing with their striker? Like, is it a zonal marking thing? Is that what it is? Is he just popped up in his zone and he's had to go with him? Is Martin Ødegaard strong enough there? If he's going to foul him. Do you know what I mean? He doesn't do enough. Sort of got his hands on him, but doesn't really do enough to sort of put him off or anything. I don't know. Look, again, not going to dwell on that incident too much, because I don't think it was the be all and end all, but it was frustrating to watch people sort of dismiss that it come off of his elbow, when for me it quite clearly did. I think this inconclusive rubbish is another one of those PGMOL sort of buzzwords that they like to hide behind. Clear and obvious, inconclusive, all of this crap that they roll out when they can't make a decision, basically. But anyway, the game ended, and look, between 75 minutes and the final whistle, I didn't ever feel like we were going to equalize. I didn't ever feel like we were going to be able to create anything of note. We didn't. We had a few ventures forward, didn't really make anything of them. And it was a really frustrating end to the game. And then, as I say, we looked at the Premier League table, and you look at the consequences of that, and they could be quite big. And so that obviously sparks a reaction. The team selection sparks a reaction as well, because it's a strong team selection. And now you don't have everybody sort of 100% and ready to go again for Wednesday. But at the same time, you don't have the result. Now, if you had the result, you could justify the decision to leave so many of those key players on the pitch for such a long time. I mean, if you look at it, I know we took Declan Rice off, right, with 15 minutes to go. He was replaced by Mikel Merino. Ben White might have to play if Jurriën Timber doesn't make it in Paris. God help us if he doesn't pick up his form. But he played 86 minutes. Raya, Luis Skelly, Kiwior Saliba at the back, all going to start on Wednesday. All played 90. Partey, Ødegaard played 90. Martinelli played 86. Trossard probably doesn't start. He played the 90. Saka played 86. So we've not got the result. We've not got the rest. We've not been able to protect players. It was just all round a really bad day for the Arsenal. And that's now 21 points that we've dropped from winning positions in the Premier League this season. That is our joint most ever in a single campaign. That is not good enough. And again, yes, the Premier League title's been up for a while. Yes, we knew that we weren't going to win it months and months and months ago. Nobody's denying that for a second. But we haven't even made Liverpool have to go out and win it. We've allowed them to literally crawl over the finishing line. We've not given them a fight. We've not closed the gap to something reasonable. We've allowed ourselves to be dragged back into the battle for not just second place, but for Champions League football. And there's a lot to be frustrated about. There is a lot to be frustrated about. Some of the individual performances I wanted to talk about. Declan Rice, you could see that him playing in that more advanced role, it was better for him. He enjoyed it. He got his goal, etc., etc. Pretty decent performance from him. Lots of debate again about Martin Ødegaard. I thought first half he was pretty good, actually. I did. There were signs in the first half of a maybe Martin Ødegaard recovery, and I quite enjoyed the first period. Second half, though, he went back to what he's been in recent weeks, which was indecisive, making it look like he's doing a lot, but not really doing a great deal in terms of affecting the game. That's not to question his work rate or anything like that. Lots of passes completed, lots of forward passes if you look at the statistics, but the eye test tells me that, he sort of regressed from the first half into the second. So that was disappointing. Bukayo Saka was one of the big disappointments for me. He came back and sort of Perry Groves made this point to me when we were talking on the Talk Sport Arsenal show last week. He said that when you first return from an injury and you're building yourself up to fitness and all the rest of it, the first few weeks, the reason that we often see players come back and then dip, so they come back at a really high level and then they drop off again. We saw it with Ødegaard, didn't we? When he first returned from that injury earlier in the campaign and then he went back to square one again. A lot of the time it's because you're running off adrenaline, but you're struggling actually to get up to the fitness level that you need. And I think we're in that space with Bukayo Saka right now. He can impact games and he needs to be in the team. And he certainly needs to be in the team on Wednesday, because without him, we have not much hope, to be honest. But his all-round game isn't where it needs to be. He was a bit of a letdown yesterday. Leandro Trossard, he's not a 9, man. I thought there were some good moments from Trossard, some good touches, some good passes. He almost scored in the first half with a header that was saved by Kepa. But he's not a 9. He's not a 9. You're hanging the guy out to dry, unfortunately. And I thought that Jakub Kiwior has kind of gone back into the Jakub Kiwior mode that, we'd all sort of come to expect. Again, it's not to dig him out. Like, he needs to have a big game on Wednesday. They all do. But I was really, 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 really frustrated with a lot of players' performances yesterday. Like, really, really was. But yeah. Okay. Shall we take some of your questions? Remember, patrons, we're going to be doing player ratings. As soon as we end here, I'm going to hop over to Patreon and record that. So you'll get that probably in the next half an hour or so if you haven't done so already. Check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/the Chronicles of a Gooner. The link is in the description. Quick reminder, if you haven't done so already, please leave a like on the video. It really, really does help. Let's have a look at where we're at on those. We've only got 43 likes on the board. Given how many of you are watching, we should have at least a couple of hundred likes. So like. It really, really does help. And subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. If you're listening to us on audio, leave us a review. And again, patrons, you will get access to my player ratings from yesterday's game very shortly. But you'll also be able to access all of our episodes ad-free. And I know for a lot of people, that's a big deal. So that's one of the benefits of being a Chronicles of the Gooner patron as well. Okay, should we get your questions then from the live chat? We'll do that right after this.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe.
You heard the man. Like and subscribe. Right, let's take some of your questions. Patrick says, Harry, do you think Raya's long pass to Ødegaard through the middle was some kind of practice for the PSG game? It worked once out of the 4 times that we tried it. I thought Raya played some really risky passes yesterday. I thought that we tried to capitalize on the fact that Bournemouth like to play quite high up. And listen, there's a balance, right? With everything, there's a balance. And I think it's good that we've got a goalkeeper that's really confident in his distribution. And a lot of the time that will benefit us. But I also think there are times where you just got to dial it back, man. There are times where it's not the right thing to do, where it doesn't work. And annoyingly, It feels like at times recently, David Raya has taken maybe more risks than he should. Now, I was thinking about this last night when I was sort of told you guys that I was kind of mulling over it in bed and winding myself up before I went to sleep. One of the things I was thinking about was David Raya, because I read something on X where someone had gone through and like made a thread of like all the like really dangerous passes that he's played in recent weeks and stuff, and sort of shared a success rate which wasn't exactly flattering on the Spanish goalkeeper. But what came to mind for me was, okay, he's playing these passes over and over again. Why is he playing these passes? Because ultimately that's where the problem lays, right? Why is David Raya playing so many risky passes? For me, it's because we have an over-reliance on him to break the lines for us. Now, why is that? Because we're not doing it well enough from the back. We're not doing it well enough from midfield. There seems to be a problem with that generally in our team. And teams have figured out, I think, how to stop us playing out from the back. PSG certainly did that with their press. And that kind of press requires a lot of work and a lot of aggression. And it's probably not something you can maintain for an entire game. But they did it yesterday. They did it on Tuesday. And they made life difficult for us. And so the only pass on for a lot of our defenders when they received it from the goalkeeper. So it was going like this, right? We'd play it out from the keeper to one of our centre halves. Very quickly, that would trigger the opposition press. They would close us down. They would close down the passing lanes into our midfield. And there'd be nowhere for the likes of Saliba or Kivior, who were on the ball, to go. There was nowhere to go. So what then happens? They turn back and they roll it back to their goalkeeper. Now, the goalkeeper looks up and he sees Leandro Trossard playing at centre forward and probably thinks to himself, there's not really much point in me going long here. We're not going to have a great success rate in doing this. So the goalkeeper then tries to look for an alternative. Now, in looking for that alternative, you cause a bit of a delay. And in that delay, you allow those pressing to get closer to you, which gives you less margin for error, less time to kind of continue thinking. And you end up having to try and play something a little bit more difficult in order to get yourselves out. Now, when you got Marino up front or you've got Havertz up front, you're able to go that little bit longer, which means that, okay, you're not playing the ideal way. You'd much rather play out from the back and sort of leave the percentage game for more desperate times, but you do have that option. If you don't have those passing lanes available to you as a goalkeeper, and you don't have the option of going long with as good a success rate, then you're going to start to have to get creative. And the more creative you have to be, the bigger the risk you're taking, and the less often you're going to pull those passes off. So David Raya's got to take some responsibility, yes, but there's a bigger problem at play here. And there's a bigger issue that is contributing to the fact that David Raya is the one that we're trying to play out from all the time. He is a goalkeeper at the end of the day. And no matter how good you think he is with his feet, that isn't going to serve us well if we've got an over-reliance on him. So that's what I think about that. But really, really good question, mate. Thank you. Taha says, are you Arteta in or Arteta out? I think this is a stupid conversation to be having a few days out from a Champions League semi-final second leg. Really, really stupid conversation. Mikel Arteta ain't going nowhere. No matter how much the trolls online want to see him sacked tomorrow, it ain't going to happen. So forget about it. Focus your energy on getting behind the team and supporting the team in what's going to be our biggest game on Wednesday night in probably 20 odd years. Focus on that. Don't worry about Mikel Arteta's future right now. Come the end of the season, you want to do a post-mortem, we can have a chat about it. Not a problem at all. But right now, this is a stupid question, stupid conversation. I'm sorry, mate. Like, I don't normally call out questions and say they're stupid, but this is the classic example of that reactionary and over-the-top narrative that seems to grip our fan base online. I'm as annoyed as anybody about what we saw yesterday. And I think I've spent the last 39 minutes or so expressing my frustrations at a number of elements around yesterday's game. But I'm not going down the route of should the manager be sacked, because I think that's a really stupid narrative to start sort of going down. Rumble says, do you feel stupid putting Arteta in the elite bracket of managers? No, I don't. If Arteta wins the Champions League, you're going to feel stupid for constantly questioning that. I guarantee you, if Mikel Arteta left Arsenal tomorrow, he'd pick up a massive job. Massive job. Okay, Ian Roy says, question. Every other semi-finalist rotated bar Arsenal. Is it the inexperience of Mikel compared to others who have been there? For example, Inter and Barca are still in their title races. So I would argue that those teams have got less players missing, which means that their rotation leads to a lesser drop-off than what ours does. I would also argue that they had easier fixtures at the weekend than the one that we do. And when we're talking about certain players being burnt out and run into the ground over the course of the season and why people have looked like, they've dropped off, it's not just about what happened last week. It's not just about what's happened between PSG on Tuesday and yesterday. It's a kind of knock-on effect that it's had over the course of the season. Players have played too many games. And as a result of that, they've ended up in a situation where they're running out of steam at the end. Pete G says, what happens to Arteta if the unthinkable happens and we miss out on the top 5? If we miss out on the top 5, then we can have a conversation at the end of the season. For sure. For what it's worth, I still don't think he'll be sacked. And I certainly won't be banging the drum and making a massive case for him to be sacked. But I would accept that if we finished outside of the top 5, that we need to have a conversation. And then there'll be a kind of assessment. There'll be a sort of a report, a post-mortem, if you like. And they might reach the conclusion that his management contributed to that. Or they might reach the conclusion that actually the circumstances around this season have led to that. And we were in the Champions League latter stages and we really did have to go for that, etc., etc. But look, there's no shirking away from it. Missing out on Champions League football for next season would be a disaster. It would be a disaster. So, yeah, look, if we don't make the top 5, then yeah, we got to have a conversation for sure. Junior Gunner says, there are lots of Arteta related questions. If we finish behind City and Newcastle without reaching a final in any competition, including a battering against Newcastle in the Carabao Cup and going out of the FA Cup to Manchester United in the 3rd round, is there a fair argument he should go? There is a fair argument, yes. Do I think it will happen, though? No. But it is a fair argument. It is a fair argument. What else have we got in the live chat? Wesbird says, do you think Arteta will revert back to Marino up front on Wednesday night? He didn't go up front yesterday, but instead went into midfield where he's not mobile enough, in my opinion. I think that was more about protecting Declan Rice than it was about anything else. I think Marino does go up front against PSG. I think that's our best option right now in the centre forward position. I like Leandro Trossard, I do, but I just don't think he's a 9. So yeah, I think that will be the way that he goes on Wednesday. Dr. Pepper says, I agree with the lack of fan energy contributing to the atmosphere and non-conscious mindset, Harry. Some people got too comfortable cruising in second place. No time for complacency in the Premier League. Yeah, look, when I said this earlier on in the show, sort of I had one eye on the comments and I felt like a lot of people took it as though I was going, well, it's the fans' fault. No, I'm not. It's not finger pointing, right? But I do think that atmosphere makes a difference. I do. And I think the last couple of years at the Emirates have taught us that. I always believed it, but I think I've kind of had that confirmed now. And when you go to a game with that kind of attitude, and I understand why the fans are there, and you make the case that if the team was still in the title race, the atmosphere wouldn't be like that. So it's on the team and it's on the club. But I do think it does play some part. It does. It really does. There's no denying that. Anwesh says, Harry, the biggest problem I'm seeing is we can't score goals. If we're tired or trying to make a comeback, we don't even try. Is it due to lack of options on the bench or a mindset thing? Well, it's a bit of both, isn't it? Because we don't exactly have a rich array of attacking options on the bench. You look at the bench yesterday, Nathan Butler-Oyedeji, young player, hasn't really done it at this level, hasn't even played really at this level. Raheem Sterling is... I'm not going to be cruel, so I'm not going to speak on that. Ethan Nwaneri's the one. And I have found it truly baffling that having been trusted as much as he was just a few short months ago, that he is being overlooked in the way that he is now. He should have come on earlier against PSG, in my opinion, and he should have come on earlier yesterday. And it's not happening. And I'm not really sure why that is. I mean, he came on, 88 minutes against PSG, 86 yesterday. To me, it's a strange one. It really, really is. It really is. I can't put my finger on it. CJ Dan says, what position does Havertz play next season? I think that is totally dependent on the business that we do in the summer. But the good thing about Havertz is that he can play either as a midfielder. I don't think he's as good there, but he can do it. Or he can play as a centre forward. And so if you go and buy a striker and you've got him and Havertz as your two striking options while you're waiting for Jesus to recover, I think that puts you in an okay place, like a decent place, depending on who the striker you get. Look, you won't find a better second choice centre forward than Kai Havertz. You won't. But I also think we've badly missed him in this time that he's been out. And I think it's shone a light on how impactful he is in a number of ways, whether it's attacking from set pieces, defending from set pieces, the runs that he makes down the sides of teams into channels, the way he can hold the ball up, the way he links up with others. I think a lot of the Kai Havertz haters, if you like, or those that didn't appreciate what he brings to the table have had their eyes opened in the last few months where we've really struggled. Okay, I am going to leave it there, I think. I'm going to hop over to Patreon now and record the player ratings from yesterday's game, which you can access in around about half an hour's time if you're a Chronicles of a Gooner patron. The link is in the description. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Leave a like on the video if you haven't done so already. All of that wonderful stuff really does help. And if you're listening on audio, reviews are the golden currency. We'd love to have them. Can we get to 100 likes before I hit the end stream button? Let's see. Let's just kind of summarize. Really disappointing result. Really disappointing second half performance. The worst possible preparation for PSG in a lot of ways because the result was demoralizing, but we also were unable to protect key players because of how the game panned out. You start them fine, but we weren't even able to get them off, which for me means that it was the kind of worst possible scenario in terms of the outcome. Worried about Timber because looking at Ben White's performance, we need him on Wednesday night. I'm confident that he'll be okay. I think yesterday was probably something that was done or was taken as precautionary measure. But yeah, look, you pick that team, you got to go out and perform and you got to get the result. And if we get the result, we feel good. We kind of take another step towards consolidating second place and we go into Wednesday night full of confidence. Instead, we're now questioning whether or not we're going to make it to the Champions League next season. And even if we do pull off a miracle on Wednesday night, I know people are not going to really care about what happened on Saturday because they'll get caught up in the excitement and the jubilation and all that. And then I'd be the first one to do that. You know what I mean? But at the same time, even if we did make the final, it would be kind of annoying that we now need results against Newcastle and against Liverpool and all the rest of it, because we could have just cruised to the end of the season, protected people, tried to keep the tools sharp where necessary and where possible, and move forward, with a focus on a final. But even if we make the final now, we got to worry about what's going on in the Premier League, which isn't ideal at all. Imran says, and I'll finish off with this, right? Because I think this stuff, it's important to address because it grinds on me, actually quite a lot. And I know Imran's saying this respectfully, right? So this is not me having a go at you personally, but I get this kind of stuff a lot. Respectfully, both Tom Canton and Harry need to reflect on this nonsense of a defense of Arteta. For me, and I can't speak for Tom, but I have watched Mikel Arteta pick this club up from a really bad place and put them in a position where we're now expecting them to go and win a Champions League semi-final on Wednesday night. That is so far from where we were. It's unbelievable. This is the first league season in 3 where you could argue there's been a regression. And I think if you factor in all the issues that we've had, it doesn't excuse the regression, but it does to some degree explain it. people say that I'm really safe in my predictions and stuff. I like to watch things play out. I'll share my opinions along the way, as I've shared my opinions about today's game, and that's all well and good. But I'm not someone who's knee-jerk, not in anything, really. I like to watch things pan out. I like to educate myself on things, and I like to not judge stuff prematurely, because I think that's one of the worst things that you can be, is judgmental. And there'll be people that push back on that and say, well, you know what? He's been in charge for a few years now. I think we kind of get the gist of whether or not he's the right man. But again, that's ignoring the context and ignoring all the circumstances under which he's had to work. It's also ignoring the fact that this is his first job. He's a first-time manager. And it's a big job to take on as your first one. There's a lot of pressure, etc., etc. But overall, he's done well. Now, people seem to think that I defend him blindly. And I know that Tom gets this accusation as well. And that whatever he does, I will always defend him. No, I've spent the best part of 50 minutes questioning so many things about his team. I don't defend him blindly, but I would like to wait until the end of the season to then cast judgment on how I think he did this year. Because if you don't, you go too early, you can be made to look stupid. And if I was made to look stupid every single time, then people would not tune in to this podcast. They wouldn't care what I have to say. I mean, most people don't anyway, and there's lots of people that argue with me and all the rest of it. But I like to think that I like to give a balanced opinion and a balanced argument on stuff. And some people will say that it's too heavily kind of leaning one way. Others will say, you know, I'm too nice. Some will say I'm too nice. Some will say when I criticize certain things that I'm too harsh. I can't win. I can't please every single listener. Not every listener is going to agree with me, and that is cool, man. That is absolutely fine. My analysis might be different to some of yours. My views might be different to some of yours. But this accusation that gets leveled at me of, oh, well, you'll always protect Arteta, that really does annoy me. Believe me, I have said things that the football club do not like. That's happened. Right? Because I try to be balanced and I try to be fair. But I'm comfortable in doing that because I'm saying what I believe. I'm not changing my opinion. I'm not changing my view based on how it's going to go down with others. And then I get this other thing of, oh, well, you're working for the club. So, you know, of course you're going to say, I don't work for the club. I am a freelance broadcaster. I do not work for the football club. Have I done the odd jobs for the football club when they've called upon me? Yes, but I'm not a regular. I'm not. You know, you go on to Arsenal.com and watch the highlights of all the games in the Premier League this season. How many have I done? 2? Maybe 2. 1 in the Champions League, 3 all season. I've got other jobs that are my bread and butter because I don't work regularly enough with the club for that to be my bread and butter. Now, that's fine. I'm not having a go at anyone or criticizing anyone or you know, annoyed about it. The point I'm trying to make is that if you think that I feed my kids with the 2 or 3 games that I do for Arsenal every season, then that worries me, actually, because what do you think I feed them? Like, it's not, I'm not a club employee. I'm not a club employee. I am a lifelong supporter of this football club. I get to, on occasion, work closely with the football club, and that is an honor for me. But that doesn't dictate the way I feel about certain issues, or dictate the way that I analyze football matches. Some people will agree, others will disagree, and that's absolutely fine. But that accusation, oh man, if there's one thing that gets under my skin, it's that, because it's so far from the truth. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. Anyway, right, gonna love you and leave you all. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you all on the next episode. Until then, take care of yourselves and have a great day. Remember, come over to Patreon and join us for the player ratings very, very shortly. Goodbye.